It's my very great pleasure to introduce you to Sister Carol Jean Willie. Sister Carol Jean is a Sister of Charity of Cincinnati. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology and a Master's in Reading and a Ph.D. in Multicultural Education. She has extensive experience working cross-culturally throughout the United States, the Caribbean, and Latin America, and is a frequent speaker at regional and national conferences. She's given presentations around the globe in Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, and Latin America. And she recently completed 2 terms in office as the NGO representative at the United Nations for the Sisters of Charity Federation. She currently serves as program director at Earth Connection, her congregation's environmental center in Cincinnati. Sister Carol Jean will lead us in our opening prayer. So first, let us take a moment to center ourselves. Let us gather. We've arrived physically, so now let's arrive internally. Let's make ourselves present to one another and before God. These Zoom sessions can feel a little awkward. Sometimes it's difficult to find the community in Zoom that we find when we gather in person. But let's take a minute to bring ourselves together. Let's choose to be community today, here, and now. Imagine that we are together in a room and the speaker has said, "We're about to begin." So you pick up your coffee, you find your colleague, you walk to your chair, you look around to see who else is in the room with you. Imagine yourself doing that now. Imagine us together in the room. If you're participating with someone, take a moment to connect with them. Give them a smile, a hug, a hand on the shoulder. Let us recall that though we are here from many places, we are together in the presence of God. Let us center ourselves, take a deep breath in, and let it out. And now, Sister Carol Jean.
I'd like to begin our session today with a photo reflection on Laudato Si. Pope Francis has certainly captured the essence of eco-spirituality in this encyclical. And I've just chosen a few passages to just put us in that place today. St. Francis of Assisi reminds us that our common home is like a sister with whom we share our life and a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us. St. Francis invites us to see nature as a magnificent book in which God speaks to us and grants us a glimpse of his infinite beauty and goodness. Each creature possesses its own particular goodness and perfection. Each reflects in its own way a ray of God's infinite wisdom and goodness. Soil, water, mountain, everything is, as it were, a caress of God. God has written a precious book whose letters are the multitude of creative things present in the universe. From panoramic vistas to the tiniest living form, nature is a constant source of wonder and awe. It is also a continuing revelation of the divine. Nature is God's art. Everything is related to everything else, and we human beings are united as brothers and sisters on a wonderful pilgrimage, woven together by the love God has for each of us, for each of his creatures, and which also unites us in fond affection with Brother Sun, Sister Moon, Brother River, and Mother Earth. Interdependence obliges us to think of one world with a common plan. Inner peace is closely related to care for ecology and for the common good. It is reflected in a balanced lifestyle, together with the capacity for wonder, which takes us to a deeper understanding of life. An integral ecology includes taking time to recover a serene harmony with nature. We need an attitude of heart which accepts each moment as a gift from God to be lived to the full. Care for nature is part of a lifestyle which includes the capacity for living together and communion. The universe unfolds in God, who fills it completely. There is a mystical meaning to be found in a leaf, in a mountain trail, in a dewdrop, in a poor person's face. Everything is interconnected, and this invites us to develop a spirituality of that global solidarity which flows from the mystery of the Trinity. Amen. I titled this workshop, or this presentation, Understanding Our Place in Creation, a Call to Ecospirituality. And I need to tell you that this is a weekend presentation that I'm going to do in 10 minutes. So there is obviously a lot more to each of the slides that I am showing you and the multiple others that I don't have time to show you. But I'd like to just at least give you a glimpse of what ecospirituality is. Sir David Attenborough says, in times of crisis, the natural world is a source of joy and solace. It produces comfort that can come from nothing else. So truly today, the earth is in our hands. Well, to understand what ecospirituality is, we need to look back just a bit. Father Thomas Berry tells us that we're having great difficulty in our lives right now because we are in between stories. He said the old story, the account of how our world came to be and how we fit into it, sustained us for a long period of time. It provided us with all of the answers to the questions we had about how life should be lived. Today, however, our traditional story is no longer functioning that way, and we haven't yet lived into the new story. So to understand what he is saying, we have to understand the concept of cosmology. And a cosmology articulates a story of the universe that defines for people what is real and worthwhile, what is to be avoided and what is to be pursued. It interprets our past and guides and inspires our shaping of the future. And many of us have come out of a Bible cosmology, the Genesis creation story. And we are all very familiar with that story. On day one, the light, and it goes on. Each day, a new element was provided until God rested on the seventh day. But today, there are some significant issues with that story. Not that it was wrong, but simply that it was written by a people of a different time and a different place, without the scientific knowledge we have today of how the world is created and how it is continually unfolding. It's a static model of creation, not to be denied, but to be looked upon as only a part of the creation story. There's no developmental dimension in this story. It seems to be simply a one-time event. God did it and he finished. There's also no relatedness between the elements. Each creation is separate and distinct. And the earth is pretty much seen as a resource for human beings who are instructed to subdue the earth. It's also a strongly patriarchal story. The woman is perceived of as a derivative of man and often looked upon as the one who has caused Earth's failures. However, we still do believe that the creation story, this creation story, is a divine revelation. It just hasn't stopped. So while we're in between these stories, we're living into a new cosmology. We know now that we live in an evolutionary universe. It's not finished, it's ongoing. As far back as Thomas Aquinas, he tells us the first book of Revelation is the universe itself. Thomas Berry says, put the Bible aside for 10 years and look at creation. Both are so important. In each of us, the seamlessness of the universe has a unique and creative expression. This is us right here, that little tiny dot. So we are called today to ecospirituality, and that is a belief in the sacredness of nature relating to the spirit or soul of all creation. Many of us remember learning in theology classes about the heresy of pantheism. Well, pantheism posited that everything that was created was a god. We call it today panentheism, recognizing the divine as an integral part of all creation. And we also realize that human beings are inextricably related to all other life forms. We are part of an interconnected, interrelated, ever-evolving web. And we are called to live in right relationship with all of creation, because everything is intimately related to everything else. So what we know now is that the creative unfolding universe is continuous. It's self-directed, it's purposeful, increasing in complexity. Evolution is God continually working to share more of the universe with each of us. So we have to ask ourselves, what is your worldview today? If we truly believe that the universe is ever expanding, how am I allowing my frame of reference to change? If the universe is evolving, how am I allowing myself and my concept of God to evolve? Is my concept of God static or dynamic? Is my prayer life static or dynamic? Once we come to the understanding that everything is sacred, it changes everything. Pope Francis tells us that nature cannot be separated or regarded as something separate from ourselves, or as a mere setting in which we live. He tells us that we are part of nature, included in it, and thus in constant interaction with it. So where do I begin? Here are a few tools to deepen an understanding of ecospirituality. Increase your awareness, expand your knowledge, take action, and then reflect on your growth. Let's look at these. First, tune into your senses. Take slow, deep breaths. Many of you are familiar with this passage from the Bible, but one wonderful way to say it is like this: be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Focus on a single thing in nature. Just look at the absolute magnificence of this cardinal. How many times do we totally miss the beauty that is all around us? Today, during this time of pandemic, is a wonderful time to really concentrate on the beauty that truly is all around us. And so one way to respond to a call to ecospirituality is to write a poem. And I've given you several handouts, one of which is a number of different simple, easy ways to write poetry with a nature theme. So choose a metaphor to describe who Jesus is in your life. For me, Jesus is the eagle on whose back I soar. Write a 2-word poem about creation. Every line simply has 2 words. So walk around your backyard and write a poem. Haiku, most of us learned in school, a syllabic count of 5, 7, 5. It's also a prayer of praise that celebrates God's work by paying attention and then reflecting back as simply and clearly as possible what we experience in God's created world. Not a leaf stirring, listen to the nothingness, hear the voice of God. I love writing haiku. I have an entire book full because I find it a really wonderful way to pray. Tanka is an extension of haiku. Simply add 2 more syllables or 2 lines with 7 syllables each, so it's 5, 7, 5, 7, 7. New research is telling us that what we already have known intuitively, we are happier and healthier, more open and more compassionate in nature. It heals, comforts, and teaches. Here we learn about wonder and beauty, sorrow and loss, unity and wholeness. Our blood pressure goes down. We relax. We are kinder to others, human and non-human. Expand your knowledge. Read the Bible. Read the passages in the Bible that talk about creation. There is actually a green Bible, which takes the entire Bible, and every passage in the Bible about creation is written in green. Search the web for more information about a topic. Read a book about a subject in nature that interests you. Take a class, talk to a friend, meditate on the web of life. I said, choose any topic that interests you, birds, plants, raccoons, rocks. It doesn't matter what it is, just take the time to come to know something a little more in depth. And it gives us a greater appreciation for the one who created it. And then take action, pray with your expanded understanding. Take a walk or sit by a window. Write out a plan of action. Care for a plant. Talk with others about mobilizing energy around a specific topic. Plan a prayer service with others about creation. As you wake up in the morning, say to yourself, today I will be awake to the world. Repeat it as a mantra. Take this intention into your day. Use all your senses. Take a moment to breathe slowly in and out. What aspect of nature do you notice that you might not otherwise? What is attracting you? Feel the presence of the Spirit. Throughout the day, stop for a moment and recall the mantra. At night, recall what you noticed during the day and give thanks. Try eco art. One form of eco art can be done with Zentangle. If you haven't been exposed to this art form before, it doesn't require being an artist. Anybody can do it. First, take a walk. Look at the patterns that you see in nature, all around you. And then start with a shape. If you want to just draw a circle, that's fine also. And then draw a few lines in the shape. And then you simply fill every line in between the lines with a pattern. If you don't know any pattern, there are hundreds of websites if you just type in Zentangle patterns. And everybody's art comes out looking beautiful. It's also a way of quieting yourself down. I found Zentangle a wonderful prayer form because in the doing of the pattern, it quiets me down. And when I'm finished, I have a thing of beauty. Draw a nature mandala. Create a nature mandala from stones or other artifacts that you find outdoors. Walk the labyrinth. Walk it slowly and prayerfully. Take a backyard safari. Just walk in your backyard or a local park with a sense of adventure and curiosity. I think it was John Weir who said, I decided to go on vacation and I only got halfway across my backyard. There were so many interesting things to see. So what is special about this place? What is beautiful and interesting? What other plants and animals share this land with you and call it home? Think about your backyard as a sacred land and reflect on how God is present in this ordinary place and give thanks. Keep a nature journal. Choose a notebook just for journaling. Jot down your observations about what you are seeing as you walk or sit quietly. You can use words, drawings, paintings, poetry. Just take a few minutes each day to jot a sentence or two. Pick a spot outside or outside your window and look at that same spot for a week and just jot what you notice changing in that space. It's amazing if you just take one small space, how many things change. What plants and or other creatures inhabit the space. And then use your journal to jot your observations. Use Lectio Divina in nature. So begin by wandering slowly in a natural place and adapt Lectio Divina by slowly scanning the natural area attentively until an element of nature attracts you. Study it carefully. Be curious about it. If possible, feel it and turn it around. Look at it from all sides. Now, if it's a creature, you can't do that. Use all your senses to explore it. What does it look like? Colors, patterns? What does it sound like? How does it smell? What is God revealing to you through this object? Is there an insight you might glean from this new friend? I have a new friend during this pandemic. Her name is Sam. I'm not sure if it's Samantha or Samuel, but it's a squirrel who visits me every day. And suddenly I become very conscious of who just that single animal is. Write a song of praise to the Creator. Just choose a line from a psalm. I've chosen one here from Psalm 145. I sing your praises for what do you sing God's praises? Reflect on your growth. Reread periodically the entries in your nature journal. What have you learned? Ritualize your new understanding with prayer and song. Share your new insights with someone else and listen to her or his new insights. We are all called to ecological conversion, and it means falling in love with the earth, an inherently valuable living community in which we all participate, and bending every effort to be creatively faithful to its well-being, in tune with God, who loves it unconditionally. Remember, the first book of Revelation is the universe itself. Our vocation is to be sacraments of God's presence in the world. In all of creation, the ant, no less than the human, expresses the seamlessness of the universe as a unique creative expression. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Carol Jean. Thanks so much for that inspiring and thought-provoking presentation that not only gives us an introduction to ecospirituality and to the idea of the evolution of our understanding of our relationship with God and with the world around us, but also some very creative ways of nurturing that relationship and nurturing our understanding of it. I particularly like the poetry ideas. I'm not an artist at all, and the poetry ideas I find very inspiring. I'm looking forward to trying them. So we have some time now to talk with Sister Carol Jean. If you have questions for her, you can put your questions in the chat, or if you have experiences, what are your experiences of reflecting with nature, with your own growth in eco-spirituality, things that have meant something to you along the journey? How are you living? How is each of us living this evolving journey? Sister Carol Jean, I'd like to ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
We've been locked down and sheltering in place and what have you since March, most of us, many of us. And some of us live in large cities, and it's just so hard to find nature sometimes. We can't go out, or we're surrounded by concrete. I live in a city of about 12 million people that is noisy and crowded, and it's just so hard to get into nature. We seem to think that nature is going to the mountains, going to the ocean, going to the woods. What about those of us who live in cities? Those of us who are spending a lot of time indoors this year. You've given a couple of ideas, but But how do we maintain that connectedness?
One, there's a sky above you. There are thousands of stars at night. But also, just taking the time to even notice what is around you. When I was working at the United Nations, I was in New York City. And of course, you're surrounded by concrete and buildings. But it was amazing to find patches of grass here or flowers growing there, just all around us. Another idea is to put a plant in your home. Just caring for a plant somehow connects us with nature. I was on a webinar 2 nights ago with someone who gave me a whole new idea of what to do in the house during the winter, and that is growing microgreens. I had never even heard that term before. But apparently microgreens are 40 to 40 times more nutritious than full-grown plants. And so it's like growing spinach just in a container in your home, but only allowing it to grow a couple of inches and then eating it, because that is the most nutritious part of it. So I think that's another way to connect ourselves, okay? Even looking at ourselves and how we fit into nature. How am I a part of the ecosystem in which I find myself? What role do I play in this ecosystem? How am I nourishment to those around me? How do I see my connectedness to the people who are around me? Does that help?
It does. It does. Yeah, I like the question, how am I nourishment to others around me? That's yeah, that sort of shifts the responsibility, doesn't it? It's not just, or makes it a shared responsibility. It's not just what nourishes me, but how do I nourish others as well?
And I think another piece with is, how do we begin to create more green spaces in urban areas? That's become a really important issue today, is the importance of green spaces in urban communities. You know, there was one of the sisters that I know who lives in the countryside. They had a group of children come out to the country from the inner city. And one little boy was literally afraid to step off of the bus onto the grass because he didn't think it would hold him. How sad that is. So creating or working towards creating green spaces with our neighbors, how can we do that?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned that also, because sometimes I think we also forget that people around the world live in such different ecosystems. Mm-hmm. Here in Lima, I'm in a desert, for example, and we don't see rain, we don't see rainbows. I remember when a friend of mine took her children to the mountains, and they saw a thunderstorm for the first time. They saw a rainbow for the first time. So I think it's good to remember how varied the experiences of the people in the world, of people with whom we're connected are. We have a couple of comments and questions here. One question is, we have a parish school, a K to 8th grade parish school. Are there resources that you would suggest that could be incorporated into the classroom?
All you have to do is go online and you can find a lot of resources. I gave you a number of books on the resource page that I gave you, but there's also a lot of websites. So what can you do with your class? What kinds of things can they engage in? Is there property on your church grounds for a garden? Another group that I belong to here in Cincinnati is working to get all of the different religious traditions in the city to look at using the property they have and starting gardens, either CSA's, community supported agriculture, or allowing, you know, people to come and use the land themselves, or just to beautify it. How might we do that? Okay. With children also, I have found it's wonderful to take them outside. You don't have to have a large area to do that, but take them outside and let them look at something for a period of just 5 minutes. Sometimes I just have them, either we use a hula hoop, or if you don't have that, just use some string tied together in a circle, and they put that out on the ground, and they can only look at what's in that circle. And then write down, what do they see? Then let them come in and write some poetry about it, because they will observe things they've never seen before. When I work with students on a regular basis, and I have them every day, I would have them go out to the same spot every single day and write down what they saw and how it changed over the course of a week. Just helping children to become aware of what is all around them, helping them to find beauty in places where perhaps they never thought it was.
Yeah, that's something, that's advice that goes across all ecosystems. One of our members has commented, I discovered the Omega Center and Ilia Delio this summer. I find her ideas very exciting. Do you connect with her ideas?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. She is very forward thinking and certainly very much into eco-spirituality. Another one who is really good to read is Elizabeth Johnson. She also has a great deal to say. Her book, Ask the Beasts, is a really interesting take on moving closer to nature and how we might do that. With children also, just taking, Bible passages and really looking at them. What does it say? What does it mean? Finding passages and challenging them to find passages in the Bible that relate to nature.
I remind you all that you're welcome to put your questions or your comments into the chat room. Just type them into chat. One person here has commented, the more I'm aware of creation and appreciate it, I've always loved God and nature. I feel just terrible when I squash an insect. I usually let the insect go, but spiders.
I have to concur with you on that one. I'm really good. Ants, no problem. Spiders are another category. I try to put them outside if I can, but if they're poisonous, I do make an exception. I acknowledge that they are God's creatures and they are beautiful in their own way and their webs are incredible. But if they're poisonous, I think it's okay.
Someone is asking here, where's the resource page? And you should have received a packet of information before this presentation with...
Yes, I sent 3 pages of resources.
Right, with resources including...
books as well as websites.
Right, including books and things. If you didn't, please let us know and we'll make sure that, we'll make sure that you receive it. And I would remind you also that our partner publication, the Global Sisters Report, has a curriculum for middle and high school students that's also suitable for parish and family study. You can visit the environment unit of it and you'll find that link in the chat room right now.
Okay, and if you don't know this and you want to save the chat, if you look down to the bottom, if you have the chat up on the right-hand side of your screen, if you look down at the bottom where it says File, there are 3 dots there. If you click on the dot, it'll say Save Chat. And if you click on that, it will save it in your downloads. So you don't have to try to write all that down.
Right, yeah, thank you. And here's a question that I think a lot of us can probably relate to. How do you deal with the pain of environmental destruction that's all around us and increasing?
That's certainly an excellent question and not an easy one to answer. I think for me, the only thing I can do is say, what is my responsibility? What role do I play? How can I facilitate an understanding of the beauties of creation? And what can I do right where I live? What are the steps I can take to make a difference here? I can't change the whole world, and at some point I have to recognize that. And sometimes I do feel overwhelmed when I see the destruction. I travel a great deal and work internationally often, and so have seen just horrible things happen to people's lands in the name of profit, and become sometimes really overwhelmed with that. But it means I have to come back then, and I have to look at those companies and what they're doing and help other people to become aware of that. I need to recognize that I can't change it all. What I do have to accept is that I do have a responsibility to change what I can.
We're living sort of an apocalyptic moment, especially in the United States right now. There have been several strong hurricanes, and we have one member here who comments that she can see Casper Mountain from her window, and many days this week she says, I can't see her because of the fires west of us.
Yeah, we've all been watching that on television, and it is apocalyptic. We have the devastating fires out west, and then we have the terrible flooding in the southeast. And it's all a part of climate change. And I do think we have a responsibility to hold our elected officials responsible for some of the devastation we do see due to a lack of action. I think elections are going to be really important. We have to ask those questions at the local and national levels. What are you going to do about climate change? And I think we have to keep asking those questions. If you want a really wonderful book to read, it's called, I'm not sure I put it in that bibliography. It's not Ecospirituality as such, but it is a wonderful one to understand what is happening with climate change. It's called Cranky Uncle versus Climate Change. And the subtitle is How to Work with People Who Believe that Climate Change is a Hoax. And it's written by a gentleman from Australia, Dr. John Cook. And love his work because in addition to being a climate scientist, he's also a cartoonist. So it's a wonderful book to read. And he shows you how to find the fallacies in what some people are saying. Like he'll talk about fake experts. And we're seeing this with lots of our politicians today. You know, parading somebody up there and saying, you know, Dr. So-and-so. Well, Dr. So-and-so knows nothing about what he's talking about. He's got a doctorate in a totally different category. Okay, and he really doesn't know anything about this, but he's helping you to understand that. Like his cartoon with that shows a TV anchorman, and he says, and we're going to talk about the solar system this evening. And on the left here, we have Dr. blah, 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 who is an astrophysicist and has worked in this field for 30 years. Now, to be fair, we're going to look at the other side of this issue, and we have a member of the Flat Earth Society. And he's trying to show that you can't put those two one with the other. You have to recognize expertise. And what is the field of expertise? Just because someone has a doctorate doesn't mean they have a doctorate in what they're talking about. I have a doctorate, but you don't want me talking about medicine because I know nothing about it.
There's a wonderful webinar that was done last week by the Catholic Climate Covenant. It was an interview with Dr. Catherine Cahill, who is she's a climate scientist, and she's also very open about her Christian faith. Her husband is a pastor, if I'm not mistaken, and she said that people will ask her, do you believe in climate change? And she'll say, no, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. That my faith is what I believe in. Climate change is there, and the call of our faith is to do something about it. She switches the discourse. She changes the ground on which the argument is being phrased, and I think that's I appreciated her saying that. I thought it was an interesting way of approaching things with people who want to get into that kind of argument without going into depth. We have one member who says, I hate to get political here, but we need to vote, and to vote for the candidate that will not deny but work to change the direction of climate change.
Absolutely. I just typed in there a website, skepticalscience.com, and that is Dr. John Cook's website. And he has on that website a lot of the information that's in his Cranky Uncle book, as well as a lot of the cartoons. And he very generously says, take these cartoons and reproduce them. Use them in your presentations. he said, we need to get the word out there. But I think you'll find what he has to say there. When you said Dr. Catherine Cahill, she's in a course I'm taking from him right now online.
Excellent. Yes, and the link to that Catholic Climate Covenant webinar with Dr. Heho is in your chat now too. One member comments, I'm involved with Audubon and I've been tending to and developing a native garden to attract pollinators, birds, and animals. It's so important to help restore the environment with native plants to help keep our native species from disappearing due to the loss of food sources, places to nest and live. For example, monarch butterflies can only have sustenance from milkweed. Loss of this one native plant will directly affect the survival of this precious member of God's creation. Starting your own native garden or helping in one is a great way to preserve God's creation.
That's an excellent idea. The environmental center that I work at is called Earth Connection. And we are completely redoing all of our grounds with just native plants for just that reason.
There's a question here that sort of goes back to what we were saying about the mention of Dr. Heho. Do you see an ecumenical alliance in leadership on eco-spirituality?
Absolutely. One of the committees that I worked on at the United Nations was the Interfaith Committee, but I was also on the Environmental Committee. And so we did a year-long series on spirituality and sustainability. And we looked at what each religious tradition had. People come from the Hindu, Baha'i, Buddhist, Zoroastrian, any tradition I can find here in the city. I've had them come and speak about their approach to it. And then we have an organization here in Cincinnati called Green Umbrella, which is literally an alliance, an umbrella of all of the organizations that work with environmental sustainability in the tri-state area, Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio, this section here. And they just asked about 3 months ago, they started a new impact team, they're calling it. And I was asked to be on the steering committee for that. And the impact team is designed to, it's called the Go Green Faith Impact Team. And our task is to work with all of the religious traditions in the city to bring us together around environmental issues. Now, another place that's already doing that and doing it really well is called faithinplace.org. And that's out of Chicago, and they've been doing this for 20 years. They've got a wonderful, wonderful program there. And their whole thing is working with different religious traditions, and they have more than 350 religious congregations involved in greening their communities. They've got some wonderful ideas. And it's just faithinplace.org. I'll type it in here.
It's interesting that you mentioned that also, because I think we sometimes lose sight of the fact that around the world, this is an issue around the world. And in many countries, that dichotomy of is the climate really changing, that doesn't exist. And there are many parts of the world where people see so many aspects of climate change that they don't question it. And groups are coming together. I know I see this in Latin America, that there are a number of interfaith and interreligious groups that are acting on environmental issues and climate issues in particular.
Well, and I know in Africa, I do a lot of work with microfinancing there. And I mean, they're beginning to, there are solar panels on huts in Africa. Mm-hmm. They are aware of what's happening to the environment, and they're taking steps to do something about it. And it's people working with people. It doesn't always come from the government levels. However, I will say that the governments have really been instrumental in not allowing plastic bags in the country. Rwanda, there's a really steep fine if you are caught even bringing a plastic bag into the country, because they realize how detrimental they are to the local environment.
It's interesting. There's a lot that we can learn from each other. And I think there's a lot building those connections and recognizing our interconnectedness, not just with, our interconnectedness with everything, our interconnectedness with the natural world, but also our interconnectedness with one another, and how different people are facing these issues around the world. Years ago, I met a Christian brother, and he was an Irish Christian brother who was the Christian Brothers point person for eco-spirituality and care for creation, I think was his, or environment, eco-spirituality and care for creation, I think it was. And his job was to go around the world and help the places where they had ministries engage more in exactly the kinds of reflections and kind of lifestyle changes that you're talking about. And I remember the Christian Brothers are a teaching order mainly, so he was working largely with schools, and they ranged from schools in rural areas to schools in very urban areas. I remember him telling me about a group of school children in India who they had nothing but urban development around them, but they were discovering the birds around their school. But he told me that his message boiled down to love your local ecosystem. People care about things that they love. People take care of things that they love. And it made me think that that's something that we can all do any place where we are, is help other people learn to love their local ecosystem, whether it's in the mountains or in the desert or in a city. That's one of the things that we can do with our own neighbors.
Yes. There's a Jesuit priest in India who has an incredible center called Taramitru. And he now works all over the country of India and has people engaged in environmental initiatives. You know, they're going to vary from place to place, depending on the country, depending on the topography, depending on, you know, what the resources are that are available. But everybody can do something, and that's what we really have to work. The person who asked about children before, it's really important that we help children to understand how important it is to care for creation.
What you said when you said you take children outside and have them choose a small area, draw a circle in a small area, and have them look at it. There's actually a series of books for children about that. It's a 1 square meter of, or 1 square yard of your backyard, or one is a rainforest, one is an ocean. I think it really helps. I think it really helps focus on the small things and how we relate to those small things.
It does. And sometimes we don't know what's right there in our own backyard. I was giving a workshop a couple of weeks ago to teachers in Belize. And I was actually doing one for them on the rainforest, because they have a rainforest in their country. And it's an important part of their ecosystem. And 95% of the teachers had never been to the rainforest in their own country.
Wow.
And I think that's true for many of us. One of the things that I think the pandemic is the positive aspect is it's causing us to look at our own environment differently, because we can't go very far. And so I know I discovered a new park in Cincinnati the other day that I'd never known about before, and it's beautiful. It's maybe 20 minutes from my house, but I didn't even know it was there. So I think, you know, if we begin to explore our own environment and come to appreciate that, that just extends to the rest of the world.
It does, and it's such a powerful call to us, especially this month. We're in the season of creation, which began at the beginning of September 1st, with the World Day of Prayer for Care of Creation, and it will end on October 4th, which is the Feast of St. Francis. And during this month, we're called to consider our place in the world, our relationship with creation.
I'm just going to say, someone asked here for the website for Dr. John Cook, and it's right above your chat, www.skepticalscience.com. And I also put my email there. So if I've said something and you'd like to contribute something that I can add on to what I do speak about, or if you want further information on something, please feel free to email me.
Thanks so much. Someone else here has commented that another global interfaith organization is Green Faith, greenfaith.org. And that's in your chat also. We also have a person who's commented that virtually all major churches have senior lay councils, boards, and elders populated by C-suite corporate managers. Can these influential people be encouraged to imbue their business practices with the principles of eco-spirituality?
That is a wonderful question and a real challenge, because the biggest barrier today to us really moving forward with positive climate change initiatives are the major corporations. But even corporations like oil companies today are recognizing. So one of the things we have to kind of push these people towards, how do we embrace the new jobs that are available because of climate change? The jobs available in wind and solar energy. In Ohio alone, there are more jobs available in renewable energies than there are in oil, gas, and coal combined. So someone I was speaking with on a board was saying, what we have to do is, for some people who perhaps don't understand the spirituality of caring for creation, they do understand economics. And so how do we help people to understand the economic advantages of taking climate change seriously?
Thank you, Sister Carol. Sister Carol Jean, thank you so much for this inspiring presentation, this uplifting presentation, for giving us a lot to think about and giving us some practical ideas, things that we can do in our homes, with our families, with children, with other adults in our communities, and connections we can make around the world. And so I'd like to thank all of you who've joined us today. Thank you for being members of NCR Forward. Thank you for your support and for being part of this project. One of the things that we do with EarthBeat is try to encourage prayer and reflection on these issues, and to draw the connections, particularly the connections between our interconnectedness, if you will, and the natural world and justice. Climate issues are justice issues also. Environmental issues are justice issues, and that's something we feel very strongly about at NCR and EarthBeat. So thank you to all of us who've joined us today. Thank you to Sister Carol Jean for sharing her experience and her wisdom and those wonderful photographs. The photographs that she used in her slideshow are hers, and thank you for sharing those with us. And thanks to everyone at NCR, especially the people who've been our safety net today. On Monday or Tuesday of next week, you'll receive an email that'll follow up today's presentation. We'll include a link to the recording of today's session with Sister Carol Jean, as well as the prayers and resources that we spoke about today. And we thank you for your patience. Thank you for your participation. When you get that email, it will include a link with a brief survey. It would help us a lot if you would take the time to complete the survey. Please help us out with this. We want to offer sessions that are relevant and helpful to our members, and your input will guide us in doing that and reaching that goal. Please also watch your email for announcements about future events in the NCR Forward Fall Series. And if you've enjoyed this, if you enjoy the NCR Forward events, please tell your friends. Please invite other people to become members of NCR Forward. To close, Sister Carol Jean will lead us in prayer. And although our prayer will close the door to this gathering, it will keep us joined together in the presence of God. So let's take a deep breath. And as we do, let's consider all of those who are gathered here today, all of us who are present, all of us who are part of a much greater web. Let's visualize that web that extends throughout the universe, with all of the creatures, all of the people, all of the rocks and the rivers, the ocean, the mountains, the deserts, the forests, all of the beings that dwell, all of the creatures that dwell in our earth and in our universe. Take a deep breath in and let it out. Sister Carol Jean?
Okay, I just want to say to the person who asked about what you can do with children, if you email me, and I did put my email there, I will send you a list of children's books that deal with the environment that you might be able to use with your classes as well. Okay. And for our closing prayer, I'm going to invite you to say it with me. It's just a short line, and then there's a picture to just take a moment to reflect on it. So let us just take a moment to quiet ourselves down and to remember that God is ever present in our lives. And so let us pray together. God of the universe, we thank you for your many good gifts, for the beauty of creation and its rich and varied fruits, for clean water and fresh air, for food and shelter, animals and plants. Forgive us for the times we have taken the earth's resources for granted and wasted what you have given us. Transform our hearts and minds so that we would learn to care and share, to touch the earth with gentleness and with love, respecting all living things. We pray for all those who suffer as a result of our waste, greed, and indifference. And we pray that the day would come when everyone has enough food and clean water. Help us to respect the rights of all people and all species, and help us to willingly share your gifts today and always. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Sister Carol Jean. Thanks to all of our NCR Forward members, and we're done. Thank you all for being with us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.